thank you so much for joining us today. We're very honoured to obviously have Jonathan here. What I'd say, if we all move in a little bit, then you can all sort of see and hear, and we don't have to speak as loud. I also hate the sound of my own voice, so this is quite anxiety right now. All right, awesome. Okay, right, before we start today, I just want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather today and pay my respects to the elders past and present and extend respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. And thank you. Right, so Jonathan, thank you for coming all the way from America to join us here today for your solo show.
Thank you for putting this together.
Oh, thank you.
Stephen called me and said, I saw some of your images online, and he said, I got a feeling you got more, and would you be interested in putting some sort of a storytelling exhibit together? And a lot of the photos were really, I went out to do the documentary, and that was my focus. And when I was out there, photographer Anton Corbin, which is a very well-known photographer, he said, why don't you grab a camera and take some shots? You know, you're there, you're right there. So just maybe one day you take some photos, the next day you film. And I had all these photos at the end of the tour, and I went up to Trent and I said, hey, I got all these images, and for whatever reason, they sat somewhere in the recording studio, and then they ended up going into storage at my mom's house. And when COVID hit, I was at my mom's house during COVID, and I started going through old boxes, and they were stuffed underneath the steps in the basement. And I opened the box up, and I was like, wow, these kind of are relevant today, you know. And so thanks to Stephen, we made them public, and this is, it was the other side of the world for me. but yeah, I'm honored to be here, and everybody's been so amazing, and it's very humbling, so thank you.
Well, first of all, we should say thank you to Anton for telling you to pick up the camera as well.
Right,
because this is kind of like the treasure trove of 19 hours photography, I feel. There's something very sweaty, and you can feel like you're in the shot, and I think that's a very big rarity. I guess before we start, so how does it feel being in Australia? Because this is your first time here, I think I'm correct in saying, since 1995 on your Alternative Nation tour. What's it like being back and showing your work here?
Yeah, well, the biggest distinction is when you're on tour, I think we I don't know what the order was, but it was like one day Brisbane, next day Sydney, then Melbourne, and then you're on a plane and you're gone. So you really don't get to spend time unless it's a day off. So we've been here about a week, and as an American, it's eye-opening, to come so far away and see a culture that's a little more together than ours, I hate to say. But yeah, it just kind of puts things in perspective. Everybody just seems like they're enjoying their life, and it doesn't seem as intense as in the States. But yeah, so that's the biggest distinction, is able to just kind of live a little bit and not be rushed around. And
So you're born in Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
And I think that's where Trent was born and Chris was born. So obviously there's this creative, obviously, hub there. If I remember correctly, you moved to LA. Yep. You were in a record shop. How did you suddenly end up on tour, and with this history with the band and friendships and stuff, how did that all come to part?
So where I grew up is in Pittsburgh, and I started working for a concert promoter, and I was just a runner, and for some reason they trusted me in the dressing room near the artist. And we did everybody from stadiums to club shows, you name it, Throbbing Gristle to Pink Floyd, everybody, Rolling Stones. And they kept trusting me in the dressing rooms and picking up the artists at the airport, taking them to the radio station. And so I guess I got trusted to be in the proximity. So, but then when I moved out to Los Angeles actually to get into something totally different, and ran into a lady that she said was a rehearsal hall where it had no markings on it. It was just a cement block building. And I was telling her about what I did back east, and she goes, well, I need a nighttime manager, and if you want to come over And sometimes the artist stays late, and it's like 2 a.m. or something. And if you're willing to do that, and like the first day I went into this building, it was like Paul McCartney was on this side, Neil Young was over here, and I was just like, what is this place? And so when I was doing stuff with the concert promoter, when the show would start, for about 3 years I did that, and I would go out and look at the show and watch the performances, but I was studying the stage design, and then I thought, well, I'm going to get into stage design, and I was in the proximity of Trent, and I just put the design in front of him, which if I went through management, I wouldn't have had a chance in hell, and Trent, we had hung out in the kitchen in the studio there a couple of times, and we just kind of connected. And of course, we talked about, oh, you're from the same little area of Pennsylvania. And I showed him the drawings, and he said, I want to do this. This is awesome. And I didn't know what I was doing, which is probably why I got the gig, because everyone was handing him industrial designs, and mine was this bizarre wooden structure thing with rubber, and it was different. And Trent always gravitates towards trying something different. And then Roy Bennett, who does these things, the stage designs, he made it happen. He brought it to life. And then I'm like, wow, what a boost for my stage designing career. And then within a week, Trent was like, hey, I was talking to the band, and they said you're a cool guy to hang out with, which I think in this job is paramount. You're intimately hanging out with these guys, and so you have to learn how to fit in and when to not say anything, and when to film, when not to film. And he said, I think what I'm about to embark on is like worthy of being documented, and how'd you like to come out on the road and be a fly on the wall? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I got the itinerary, and it was like, I thought it would take a lifetime to see all these cities. And then I realized like 5 of them were in 5 days. So I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be a whirlwind of activity. So, and my friends were like, do you understand what you're about to embark on? Like, do you understand, And and we started out in clubs, and I had always been a fan of the music, so it wasn't a stretch for me to get it and feel it and understand what was happening, and yeah.
So was there, when he asked you to come on tour, which obviously came into almost 2 years, was there a question like, have you done filming before or documentary making before? Or
so
were you like, yeah, it's fine? I
apologize to anybody that's gone to film school. I must have been so hated by, like, I remember after Anton said that, I was like, okay, now I have to go buy some equipment. And I just, again, I deserve, rightly so, have been hated by people that went to school. And I remember we were in Hawaii, and I remember going into like a tourist camera store, and I was like, well, it's going to be a very moody performance, and the lights are no control, and like he just like hands me a tourist lens, and my first shooting was just nothing came back, and but you slowly start figuring it out, and on that note, on an interesting, not having a history of or any kind of experience or training, to the photographers out here, that especially back then, this was film stock, right? So now it's digital, and you can kind of like take the picture, look down. But back then, you take the picture and you wait a week to see what you get back. Especially when you're on tour, you can't really do anything other than send it off. And so the first time I really had the right equipment, and I kind of read up on it and had a little bit of a knowledge, the first roll, 10 shots in, was the first image over there. And there's so much chaos on the stage. I mean, you guys that have seen the show, you have no control over anything. There's half the time it's too much fog. The strobe lights are just going insane, and water's being thrown around. People coming over the barricade. So you're just hanging on. Hopefully you're catching something. So like the first roll, 10 images in, I think I was on the side of the stage, and I guess he just kind of looked over, and his eye line hit my camera. I know for a fact he couldn't see me, so it was just one of those lucky things. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get so many great shots, like, you know. And it was like mining for gold. It was like nothing for the longest time. And as photographers from back in the '90s would tell you, with film stock, in that environment, you really are mining for just like one nugget of gold every 4 days or something. So yeah, wow. Interesting experience.
So you're on the road. You're going to do this documentary. Has anyone seen the documentary Closure in here? If you haven't, you can go online. If you look on YouTube, and what's the alternative to YouTube? Vimeo or something?
Yeah, it's on there.
It's on there. I think it's on the Nine Inch Nails account. Highly recommend. It's a real in-depth look at a tour in a different perspective. But when you set out to that, did you have an understanding what that video was what the documentary was going to look like?
Trent really, to his credit, he just kind of just gave literally there's one conversation, and then he just stayed out. He said, just be a fly on the wall, That's it. That was it. He never ever once told me to, go over here, do that, catch this, He just literally just stayed out, and I've done this since then. It was obviously a big break, and so I did it with some other big high-profile artists. And it seems like the bigger they are, the more they stay out. Some sort of intuitiveness to just, don't interfere. And so it's, if you don't like having a boss, it's a great job. So it was pretty cool.
Because after that, I mean, you did a Warp documentary, did a Guns N' Roses.
I was out with Axl for 2 years doing kind of the same thing.
Different experience?
Everybody kind of knows, right? Yeah. I mean, I was like, am I just being passed around with the most insane people, he's the real deal for sure. I mean, I was telling somebody, I got off the road, and they were like, what's he, I was like, dude, listen to this. And I was like telling these crazy stories. And he was like, that's exactly how what I want to hear. I don't want to hear he's a calculated businessman, and, so he was pretty out there. Yeah.
I think you shared a story the other day about, was it in Budapest or something?
Yeah, so in Budapest, it's actually an interesting story because I'm given privilege to go into the nucleus, and like with Nine Inch Nails, it was the band members, myself, a bodyguard, and a tour manager, and that was it for 2.5 years. So, same thing with Axl. You're allowed in the inner sanctuary, and so to the outside world, some stuff seems really crazy, but in his world, there's a logic to it. Like, for example, Budapest, he had a sold-out soccer stadium, and the crowd was, we were getting at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, which is, you've heard the stories of Axl, like, not going on stage. And I wasn't actually even in the dressing room. I was kind of like running around trying to get the excitement of all the crowd and everything. And all of a sudden, it was getting late. The front of house board had to like cover up because they were like loft and entire like mustard containers, and the side fences were starting to come down, and so all of a sudden there's like these 3 gentlemen appear backstage in the corridors back in the soccer field stadium or whatever. And they're like, he has to go on stage or we have to call this thing. And the manager was like, no, we're not going to call it. We'll pay the curfew, fine, whatever that is. And he's like, no, you don't understand. This is Budapest. We are downtown Budapest. Nobody lives in downtown Budapest. Nobody owns a car. The only way that these 60,000 kids got here was through the subway system. And it's about to shut down, And so I followed the manager into the dressing room, and Axl's in there. So what had happened was he was trying to warm up because he does a lot of running around on stage, and the masseuse they supplied was just terrible. And so he was like, I'm not going on stage until I get another masseuse, because if I'm not loosened up correctly, I'm not going to be able to do the next show. So he had his reasons, And so I went with the manager into the dressing room, and he was like, "You have to go on stage because they're shutting down the subways." And Axl was like, "Find out how much it is to keep the subway system going." And I'm like, and I was just like, I watched the manager just like crush in on himself, you know, because he's like the money guy, you know, he's like trying to make money out of this thing, and Axl's just like in some outer atmosphere on a tin can to Jupiter or something when it comes to money. And I'm like following him around. He goes back out to these three guys that represented Budapest, and he's like, "Axl said he'll pay to have the subway systems open. How much is that?" And they just like literally all looked at each other like, "What?" And then I think one guy goes, 150,000, you know. And we went back into the dressing room with the camera, and he says, 150,000. And Axl's like, "Pay it, you know. It's just done. It's like done." And it's like, "Oh, okay." So there goes all the profits for that day, you know. But you know, it was a great show. So he had his logic and his reasons, and then the next gig, there were 3 masseuses. True story. Right?
So let's go back to the Nine Inch Nails. So obviously when that album came out, it was getting well received, and then March of Peace came out, its first single a few days ago, and then Closer really kind of exploded it.
Right.
When you were on that tour in the beginning, was there a sense something was happening? Because obviously it sounded very intimate with the band members, tour manager, security. Was there a feeling as you were going along, there's something building, this is going to be a special thing?
Yeah, so for me, my first experience of it was, as I said, I was like in this recording facility / rehearsal hall, and he was at the Tate House, right? So the Manson murders. So they were recording the album in the Tate House, and then they got booted from the Tate House because someone bought the Tate House and they were going to tear it down. So Trent wasn't quite finished mixing the album, and so he got booted out of the Tate House where the Manson murders were, and then they moved him into to this facility, and so they built a makeshift recording studio in the back, and then there's this giant hall that you rehearse in, and then he had all his equipment there, and I remember when they were moving stuff in, some of you that really go deep with this, I think it was Happiness and Slavery, there was that torture chair. Yeah. So I'm in the middle of all this like equipment, I see this like disturbing, like, so I remember that was my first like, you know, experience of like, there's something disturbing going on here, you know? There's just like this giant like torture, metal and leather, wood, all beat up chair that like sustained, and it was just wrong, and it was sitting in with the road cases, and so I was just like, okay, this is a little heavy, and I didn't meet Trent, I didn't know him. And so my mind starts going, this dude's gonna just be a freak and all this and that, and totally normal guy,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just really down to earth, you know. But I do know that it was around the same time Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and he was kind of out there doing his thing. And I think there was a little bit of a rivalry between the two scenes. Like there was the grunge scene.
This is almost like the counter to it.
Yeah, it was like the counter culture to the grunge scene. It was like, if you don't like that flavor, this is the flavor we're doing. And then all of a sudden, you know, you found out Kurt killed himself, and that was really shocking. Like it went to some other level, because I was there with Trent, and it just felt like, wow, you know, I thought that's really, you know, at another level. Everybody was really bummed out, you know, it was like really shocking. But it did feel like something was, like once we started playing the club shows, the energy in the room and the electricity of it all, you really did feel like we were doing something pretty amazing. The crowds were just insane. I mean, it was like sold out. The club rooms were just like packed, and the energy from the crowd was matching the energy on the stage, and vice versa. And I was just really impressed by it all. Yeah.
Because you mentioned the energy in the crowd and the energy on the stage, and I guess that sort of thrives off each other. Mm-hmm. And looking at the videos of live performances, they seem to get pretty volatile and pretty hectic on stage, and like a few injuries. Any experiences that from yourself, being in and around the chaos? Were you like in the award, jumping around, dodging stuff, mic stands?
Yeah, so, I got it got very dangerous and like unpredictable on stage. And again, you know, things were being thrown, mic stands and all that. People were being tackled. There's something called the spaghetti roundup where Trent purposely knew what he was doing. He'd run with the microphone cord and he would like take out the guitar player, and just like everyone was getting tripped by all the wires, and he's just going, you know, it didn't, like I was saying, it didn't feel gimmicky. It just felt like he was just going crazy, you know. And it was like, and the guitar players were trying to figure out where to step, and you know, it was just like, it was just creating like this physical thing that was happening, you know. And the music was so good, and the sonics were just so powerful, and the audiences were so over the top, and he was like, what, you know, it just felt bigger than the room always. But when you're hanging on the stage, you start kind of getting the rhythm of the chaos, and so you kind of know where to be and where not to be, and the musicians kind of knew when the mic stand was coming and all that. And so, you know, it's 1,000 times where it kind of works, and then maybe one time somebody's in the wrong spot, and there's a 30-pound bottom of a mic stand coming at your head. And but yeah, I did have one situation where I was going to go get a shot, and I went underneath the keyboard. It's hard to explain, but and then I realized as I was filming, I'm like, you know, I know this song so well, and I'm like, okay, now what is he about to do? And oh, he's about to launch the mic stand above the keyboard that he's done 100 times, and I'm parked under the keyboard, you know. And I just went like that, and it just hit me straight in the back. Couldn't breathe. The crew guys like took me off the field, you know, like as if it was a war or something, and I was like pinned down by snipers or something. But yeah, I had to go to the hospital, and then you know, of course, when Trent was like, "Dude, I'm so sorry," and so apologetic, and I was like, "Oh, I knew you were throwing it. I don't know what I was thinking," you know. And yeah, so Chris Vrenna got hit in the head once with a mic stand, and surprisingly didn't miss a beat. Like, I was so impressed, right? We talked about that. And they, like, you can see in the footage, you see blood coming down the side of his head, and he's like still playing, and then you see somebody with a hand put, like, you know, I mean, it was, so I used to joke that if you go bowling and you knock the pins down and something comes and sets it all up, like, that's what we should have had on stage, you know. At the end of every song, like, all the equipment's just wiped off and new stuff's put down. So pretty funny.
I think one, again, for reasons to get into to hunt down a documentary, there's some really good bits in there. There's a bit when I think you're on the way to Madison Square Garden, and there's a bus crash, and I think Robin fucks his finger up pretty badly, but you see that footage with Trent backstage, like, we're not going to do the show, because this is me, I wouldn't do it, so we're not going to do it. And I felt like there's a real caring factor, like, of all of you in that sort of situations. Yeah,
that was such a freak thing. I guess, you know, if you're walking around on a tour bus and if the bus driver just, you know, taps it, everyone's going, you know, which you don't realize, like, their talent of, like, never tapping it with all the traffic and everything, and you're just walking around in the tour bus. Well, I guess from what I understand, a taxi guy stepped out and drove out in front of him, and the bus driver had to slam the brake on, and it was like the freakiest thing. Like, you have a stereo and you have glass in front, the glass case in front of it like that. He stopped, the glass door went like that, and Robin, the guitar player, trying to get his footing, you know, just land on something, his, like, the finger you need the most just went right into the glass, and it was a compound fracture, like where it just like a shreds like that. And then he was told he had to keep his hand up like that, by the way. And so there was those jokes. Well, let's keep playing, man. It fits right in. But yeah, so it was, you know, Trent made the call. He says, look, because there was a chance that it could have had an infection. And Trent was like, fuck it, you know, it's not worth it, dude. We'll reschedule the show and, you know, whatever. But yeah, that was. Wow. I didn't realize, like, how easy it is to go flying in a tour bus. You know, I didn't know that.
Wow. So the tour obviously took you, you know, it was over a 2-year tour, right? And that's
almost 3, yeah.
That's a long time with like 6-7 people and close proximity of each other.
Right.
How did that affect the relationships for you, obviously as a friend to everyone, but also as a, you're doing a job as a documentary maker. How did that affect that in that sort of time, and how do you learn to sort of navigate that as well? Because I can imagine that's quite a trying time.
Yeah. As the phrase is, it's like a test tube on wheels, because everybody's just so on top of each other for so long that you really, it's funny because the thing that Trent said to me before he asked me to come out, like I said, we had the stage design, and then there was a week before he asked me to come out. And in that week, I think he was just kind of seeing if I got along with everybody and what my personality was like. And then I found out later, he asked the band, he says, what do you think of this guy? Can he fit in? Is he easygoing? And the reason is because you really do, you're just living 24/7 with each other, and if the personalities are not working, it's going to be a really hard time. So that tour, it probably, I'm sure Trent would tell you this, and he's maybe has said this in an interview, but it just went on for a little too long. We were about 2 years in, and it was pretty intense, and we were just, you could tell like we needed to come off the road. The wheels were kind of coming off, and then Trent wanted to end with all these like totally insane club shows after we'd done Woodstock, and we were doing festivals and stadiums and arenas. And he just wanted, like, let's do 5, 6, 7 club shows. And they just full throttled it. Like, I'd never seen it turned up to that level. And just like a sprint to the finish line, nothing left, right? And then Bowie contacts him and says, I'd like to come out and tour with you, like, it was like, oh, okay, we're going back out. So, you don't turn that down, right? So. Yeah. But we did have like 3 months off, and when 9 Inch Nails came back out, they were dressed differently. We designed the stage differently. We just tried to create new energy, and kind of say goodbye to the self-destruct. That craziness was kind of like left behind. Yeah.
So you did a stage design for Bowie as well, then?
I did, yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So you obviously go on the tour with Bowie, and obviously, his life's very different at that stage of his life. He's very sober, and he's obviously like, this godfather of music. What was that like for everyone to be around someone like that? Because I imagine some ways it could be intimidating. Yeah. But like to be sharing, because if you haven't seen it, you can go and look online. You have 9 Inch Nails play the show, and you have this amazing, seamless intermission where Bowie comes out and various members coming off, and then they play like 4 or 5 tracks together, and then it goes into Bowie's show. But
right.
What was that like the whole time with those guys?
He was just such a gentleman. He had said, I've been there, done that. There was this nin camp of like, it was pretty crazy, and then all of a sudden he's there, and he found it kind of humorous. He was like, yeah, I've been there, done it. So he was very refined in his world after doing it for decades. I know at one point. And sometimes 9 Inch Nails would have some guests, with the tours are kind of going intertwined. Like Pantera was always visiting, but there was a band, I can't remember, but it was a little crazy in the dressing room, and somebody was like took a bowl of salsa and threw it, and I'm like filming, and then I like go out of that dressing room and I go into Bowie's dressing room, and they're like reading literature and Bowie's painting, So it was like an unedited, please don't ever edit that. Just show the bookends of one thing to the other, And he would paint, in his dressing room, and yeah, he'd just been there, done it, He's just so beyond it, So.
So obviously you're filming on that as well. So as a documentary maker, how did that work? Because obviously you have this all access to 9 Inch Nails, and then you go into this other entity that comes onto stage. Is there restrictions you have to work around, or is it just again applying common sensibility to what you should and where you can go? Or?
So David Bowie had a lady by the name of Coco, and she was kind of his handler. She looked out for him, and so she came up to me and she said, "You can film him anything you want on stage, but ask for permission backstage." And so then I did learn a lesson in that. So we were at Madison Square Garden, and I was like walking the corridors. The sound check had already happened, and I was just kind of like walking around. and I turn the corner and I see David Bowie, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, Marilyn Manson, Trent Reznor, Helmet. It was like I don't know if you guys remember Random Notes in Rolling Stones where they would have these like candid shots. I was like, oh, that's got to be in Rolling Stones. And then I just like took off and I ran to the production office. I went to Coco and she's like, yeah, go, take it. I come back and just as I turn the corner, they disperse. Just like So yeah, I was actually talking to somebody about as a cameraman, sometimes as a videographer too, your battery goes, and you have to just pretend your battery didn't go, so that you don't. So Trent worked on Natural Born Killers, and we were in New York City, and he hired this guy Hank Corwin to do the video, and Hank was the editor for Natural Born Killers, and Hank's like. He did Don't Look Up, and I mean, this guy's the greatest editor there is. He's just awesome. So he arranged for Oliver Stone to come into the editing bay and Oliver Stone was going to suggest some things for the music video. And so I was there with my camera, but somebody in the editing bay was like checking out my camera and they left the battery on. And so here comes Oliver Stone, I pull my camera up and I just see the blinking light. And I just pretended I was filming, Just what else can you do?
Heart's breaking inside.
Yeah. And then there was a couple times, hey, did you see that footage of Oliver Stone? I was like, oh yeah, I gotta find it. It's somewhere in the, hopefully it's off everyone's radar after a while.
Until now.
Yeah, until now, right? So yeah, you have those moments where you just, like missing that shot. It's just just soul crushing. Yes.
So. This is such a long tour. Is there? How did you work out? What to film and when to walk away, and when's a moment which shouldn't be touched and stuff like that. Because obviously, in one way, it'd be I can just cut that out later and capture it. But obviously, I get the feeling that you're not that sort of person. You sort of go, I know when I should be touching and what I shouldn't film.
Yeah. So everyone has a different philosophy, and so the philosophy that I had for documenting was. I kind of got early on quickly, like Trent's talent and what he was doing and just how raw everything was. And so I wanted to stay true to that. And, was he backstage throwing temper tantrums? No, never, not once, you know what I mean? Very, very grounded, very intelligent, just almost calm about everything, And so... they had hired a big film crew to come out and film this 2 days or something, and it was very over-polished and HBO, and Trent hated it. But in that event, they put him in a wardrobe, and when it got wet, it ballooned up, and it looked ridiculous. And here's these 35 millimeter cameras going, and then he just went crazy in the dressing room, and I didn't film it because it didn't represent the tour. It didn't feel true to the tour. Yeah. Axl, sure, that's what was going on. That was what Axl was doing all the time, and you would get that, and that's exactly what you expect from Axl, and that's what Axl was, It was like throwing temper tantrums and smashing stuff and upset and firing people, But it was just such a weird one-off. It didn't. Yeah. When you have an hour and a half, 90 minutes, that's supposed to represent 2 years. It's extremely valuable real estate, and that would have been a false pushed drama,
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, before we start asking questions to the floor, a couple more questions. Obviously, in 2018, you were at the Hollywood Pavilion for the shots at the band. What was that like going back to shoot the band again from that sort of sense after so long?
Yeah. So I hung with Trent until he started The Fragile, and then. This was down in New Orleans, and then I decided to take off and not. I had been doing it for so long, and it was so I wanted to just kind of get out of the environment, and then I really didn't. Yeah, I didn't do anything with them until 2018. Trent and I stayed friends and connected, and he asked me. He was like, "Hey, why don't you come out and be old time's sake?" And so he wanted to do, there were 6 sold out nights, and so he wanted to, if I took a bunch of photos on night 1. He wanted the best shot. Second night you could buy it, and he signed them. And so like I had to go through everything and then figure out and pick the one shot, and then it was for sale. Same thing that night. The next night it's for sale, and down the line. And so this was all when there was no digital, no Photoshop. This is all film, and that's digital all over there. And then those were like past the 6 that were selected for that limited series. Like there might be 3 shots that fell on one night, so you had to pick one shot per night. So there's the freedom, I could just pick whichever one's over there. So that's like an extension of the Palladium series.
Yeah.
And so those are my favorites from those nights, yeah.
And so when you go back to this time here, is there any performances during that 2.5 years which stick in your memory? Obviously you mentioned the sort of club shows at the very end of it. But
yeah, so it was the last club show before we did the Bowie stuff. Again, everybody was out of their mind. It was like, it was turned up to, I don't want to say 11, that'll be Spinal Tap. But it was like, it was like just frightening. And so some nights I would pick angles, and then I thought, well, later on I'll stitch it together. I can put a performance together. It's like from here, from here, from here. And then some nights I just challenged myself to try and run everywhere and try and no edits, just have this like nonstop footage. And the last show, surprisingly, the last show down in South Beach, Florida, some small club show, the amps, the fill, the speakers on the side were like almost as much as the stage. It was a very small stage, and there was like this lucky 300 people, and it was like, I got up on the corner of the side fill, and I had like this perfect shot, and I just followed the action like the whole time. And I really think at some point they should put that out, because it just everything just fell in place,
Sort of real punk energy.
Yeah, just like everything just, so even to my surprise, I was like, I couldn't believe the way people were diving, and then they're coming off the stage, and the spaghetti roundup was spectacular. And mic stands were going, and at one point the security dude was trying to like get Robin out of the crowd, and then next thing you know, Trent pushes the security guy in the crowd, and he's trying to get back on stage, and it was literally chaos.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think Trent did that purposefully. It was like let's just go out like where someone's going to get hurt here. But yeah, that one sticks out for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about these images? Because I imagine by the sounds of it, there were so many to go through. Which ones of these sort of stand out or hold a certain memory to you? You can sort of.
Yeah, so the one where there's a boy's face is my favorite, and that's Doing Hurt. It was a hard song to capture because there was a big opera gauze that came down, and then so Trent was behind the opera gauze, and they were showing footage of like really dark decay and animals decaying and old World War II blown out footage, and it was just a whole variety of images, and Trent would be lit up in it, and so I would try to capture it out front, and I was like, there's got to be a better angle to this, and I went on stage, and so I'm behind Trent, and the projector is ruining all of the possibilities for a shot, and then right when I got where Trent hid the light, it allowed me to get the image and Trent. And then again, you take the shot and you wait a week, and when it came back, I could not believe it landed on that boy's face, And there's something in that boy's eyes that represented one dynamic of that tour. One side of that tour was just angst and destroy it all, and I don't accept any of this. And then the other side was like a vulnerability, hurt, lost kind of thing. And so that one was magical for me. And then I like the one where he's smashing the keyboards. And that kind of represents the other end of it for me. And this one here was interesting because they just finished performing, and then they took him down off the stage and they put him in the hallway, and the hallway was completely dark, and they couldn't see each other, and I couldn't see them. I knew they were in there. They were waiting to do the encore, and so I took the flash, put it on, and I just flashed it, and then a week later I got that back.
Wow.
And knowing them so intimately for so long, for me, I can see all their personalities in there, and you can see everybody's kind of like exhausted, and it was a little melancholy, you know, just, you know, and then go back on stage for the encore. But yeah, that one was very interesting for me.
You can see they're almost internalizing the show, and it's like, no, you got to go back out for the final slog. It
was, and a lot of times I would be out front of house and I was like running around. And I was like, I couldn't believe how great the show was. And I'd go backstage and they were all bummed out. They had a terrible show, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking. You know, there was always that disconnect.
Yeah.
And I saw that even with other artists, other performers that I went out with. The audience is like, I'm part of the audience, and I'm going, this is unbelievable. And then you go back there and they're all bummed out because on stage they're not hitting their notes right, but to us, we don't even know what they're talking about, you know, so it's like,
Right. Well, let's open up to you lovely people. First time went straight up before I even finished what I was going to say.
I've got two questions. Kind of having been there all through this and seeing it through a lens, but your lens, like the way no one else has, and kind of being witness from there, and then getting to come around to, you know, these later tours and knowing him, like, what do you admire most about Trent, I guess, as a creative and as a person? And second question to you, you know, do you have a favourite Lunchnail song?
Interesting, yeah. Okay, so to answer the second one quickly, I was blown away by Hit Like a Hole. The first time I heard it, I just thought, it just sounded so good, and it just, that got me. Live, Reptile. For some reason, Reptile just really resonated. Every time that would start up, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Sanctified. It was like ones that were like not the showcase ones, surprisingly got me. And then what you said, the first question, I think is the coolest kind of thing to talk about. Obviously, I was given this great opportunity to be around these like really, truly talented artists, David Bowie, Trent Reznor, you know, and so it's so interesting to see them grow as an artist, and I think as true artists, you don't get stuck, you grow, and if your audience comes with you, they come with you, and if they're right there with you, they'll come with you, but if it's going to be true and you really aren't doing this as a gimmick or how to make money, and you really are an artist trying to like work through something and people are relating to it, he just matured, you know, like it just wouldn't make sense to be that guy over in 2018. And same with David Bowie, you know, we were talking, we had a lot of great opportunities to sit with him, and he would talk and he would explain, you know, his first, like the Ziggy Stardust thing, he got caught in it a little bit, and he realized if I'm going to survive this, I need to like be true to myself and not just caught up in something that people want me to be. And then he kind of started a healthy relationship with it, as when I go on stage, I can be kind of something else, and when I come off stage, I have to stay grounded. And I think Trent did go through a tough situation, but then he found his footing, and then it is exciting to see the art now because it's somebody growing, and so when I saw the shows, and I hadn't seen them for 25 years, they were all curious to ask me. They were like, well, what did you think, because you were the guy that, you know, saw it. And I was like, it just felt really mature. It felt right in the right place, you know. And so I respect him, or any artist that does that. So
awesome.
You mentioned you only had 90 minutes to capture this 2-year tour. Were there any moments that didn't make it to the documentary that you really cherish?
Yeah, I mean, you really do have to like. There's a phrase I think I'm gonna get it right, Danielle, wherever you are. But it's like you have to kill your babies. Like you really have to like detach from things that just can't, that aren't gonna make it in there, you know. And so like in the editing mindset, even when they do like feature films, like I did have a chance to talk to Hank Corwin. This is the guy that, you know, did Natural Born Killers and Don't Look Up. And he's like, you love it, it's great, but you're trying to tell a story and you got to kind of stay on point, and so you have to get rid of it. So there was a lot of stuff that just didn't make it, you know. It was heartbreaking, but otherwise it's just too much and it's too long and it loses its impact, you know. So, yeah.
You're next.
You mentioned that how Trent let you do your own thing and be a fly on the wall during shooting. Does that follow through to the editing and the production of the actual documentary? Because it really feels like a Hamish Now's release of its own. Did that just naturally happen?
Yeah, I remember I put the first edit together and, you know, Trent was like, okay, I kind of see what you're doing here. And, you know, it was just kind of like he never forcefully said anything other than just you experienced it, you kind of put something together, and yeah. Where he did step in was so that shoot that I was telling you about was like very glossy in HBO that Trent hated. So the label, you know, there I am with like probably what appeared to just be consumer level high 8. You know, how is anything going to get caught here? The label said, we're going to pay for this, you know, giant production. I think we did it in like Kansas City or something. The boom mics and the lighting was changed. They had wardrobes for everybody. And then when they got the footage back, Trent was like, it's just a glossy HBO special. Like, I just hate this. And the label was like scrambling a little bit, and everybody was like, well, there's Jonathan's footage. So I was like, and then we put something together, and it just was raw, and you know, the video seemed to work in some weird way because it was low quality video. And Trent was like, that's it right there. Like, let's get rid of the other thing and let's do that. And so other than that, he really, to the musicians out here, that you're the privilege to watch somebody like that work. I noticed a lot of times when he was working in the studio, they would kind of mess around with some things, and then like an assistant or somebody would say, well, you know, let me work on this and give you like 12 examples, and then, you know, try and go, you know, hey, you want to go to the mall or something, and you just get out of there. And then that guy would like give a bunch of samples for Trent to come back and kind of have a fresh ear and just go, okay, I like 12 and I like 2. And so a little bit of that with the editing, you know, it was like he would step out, he wasn't involved, you know, trying to stay fresh with it. So that was an interesting process to see, you know. Yeah. And I think he does that very heavily now with Atticus. Atticus will give him a lot of things to, he kind of messes around, and then Atticus will like present it for options and stuff like that. But
nice. This person is next.
Okay, thank you. Look, I know we all love a disaster story, but through all the experiences you had, do you have any particularly heartwarming ones that stick out? Even with any of the bands that you've been working with over the years?
Yeah, I actually, I actually got emotional with Bowie when he was performing, and it was Under Pressure. And again, we had been like 6, 7 people on top of each other for 2 years, and it really was a lot. You know what I mean? You just kind of had to go your separate way. And I would go out and watch Bowie perform sometimes and just listen to the songs. And that song, Under Pressure, like, you know, watching some good friends scream, "Get Me Out," it was everybody was turned up, you know. And then he would sing, you know, "Why Can't We Give Love a Second Chance?" And you wanted to just kind of step out of the intensity for me, you know. And so that was like a personal thing for me. It was just to like, I think I'm ready to like not be in this craziness anymore, which they all were. Everybody was like, we need a break, you know. So yeah, so
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
were there any specific songs or moments every night that were particularly photogenic that you knew every night I have to get that?
Yeah.
Get a killer shot out of it?
So I think it was Down in It. That's when he would do the spaghetti roundup, and I'm like and I think in the documentary we put a compilation together. Like it looks like it's one performance, but it's many nights, and yeah, just all that chaos. And I remember we went to lunch one day. We were in Los Angeles. We had like 2 days off or something, and Flood was with us, which is and Flood was kind of Flood's like such a masterful, producer, and he's worked with like, I mean, you name it, U2 and Depeche Mode and all that. He was like, I don't know if I'm into the destroying the equipment, And it was just me, Trent, and Flood at the table, and I'm the one out in the crowd with the camera, and when Trent would start doing that, the place would just roar, and it never felt gimmicky. And if it felt gimmicky, I might have agreed with Flood, but I said, I don't know. I said, I'm experiencing something out in the audience that it's like if you're angry and you don't want what's handed to you and you're pre-programmed and you want to reprogram yourself and I want to tear it all down, it was like, yes, keep playing that keyboard till it just disintegrates. And when you're done, by the way, this going into that side fill, and the lights would go down and the crowd would just roar like, wow, It was like he played the instruments past their limits, and so I didn't find it gimmicky at all, and so I found it part of the performance, musically.
Yeah, hi. I'm kind of curious with your, obviously at the beginning, going all the way back to the Self-Destruct tour, and then when you were with Nine Inch Nails over there, at least in 2018. Just kind of curious if you can talk about your growth as a photographer, maybe some of your lessons that you've learned, transitioning into digital,
right?
Kind of your approaches, and maybe basically essentially what you've learned in the process and some of the struggles that you've had to go through your growth.
I learned don't buy your equipment in a tour shop, and why, and get all your advice from the guy behind the counter selling the tourist equipment. No, I actually, I personally learned that to keep the equipment stripped down, it's okay to give up some quality for being kind of invisible. So I could have got better audio sometimes if I had a guy with a boom mic, but once the boom mic's in the room, everyone's just kind of like, so you just kind of find that what I learned from A to B was to just kind of keep your profile low, and if it means giving up some quality, maybe don't have a producer, just be able to kind of float in, float out. Don't have a lot on you so that instantly somebody sees that you're like filming, and I was so stripped down that it looked like I just had a consumer camera in my hand. That there was a moment when I was out with Axl that we were doing this giant German festival, 500,000 kids, and Lars from Metallica and Axl hadn't seen each other since when they were doing co-headlining tour stadiums. And so they happened to be on this festival bill at the same time, and Lars made his way into the dressing room, and I'm just like standing in the corner, and Axl was right here, and I'm just like waiting for Lars to find Axl, and Lars didn't even notice me, If I had boom mics and everything, he probably would have not even come over. And so all of a sudden, Lars comes over and he's like, "Hey man, are you good? I haven't seen you." And and I'm like catching everything. So if you're stripped down, you can they let you be the flower in the wall. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was and I tried all the the different lenses and everything, and have video and lenses, and it just was too bulky and it just didn't work. Yeah. So. As far as, first of all, I was lucky to film a stage that had so much chaos and so much light and movement you know, if you were filming Bob Dylan, who just stands at the microphone, you could probably call it a day and, like, you know, 3 songs in, you know. But these guys were just, there was so much for any photographer. I mean, it was just so much going on. You just hope it's, when it comes back, there's something there. And then I guess when it ended up being digital, you know, some shots that you would look at over here, which is like, oh, it doesn't work, but now you can, all of a sudden you can, like, Photoshop, pull the light in and out. It's like, whoa, you know, like the one they made the European poster out of. When I got that, it was just kind of too dark, and then I brought, you know, I pushed it on one of the Photoshop options, and this, like, kind of flat thing came out, and they ended up, you know, that was the one they wanted to use. So pros and cons with both technologies, you know. This one's, like, these seem a little more organic, and they're just, they don't feel digital because they're not, you know, and I think that shows up, and you're kind of stuck with what you have, you know, so.
We've got time for a couple more.
I guess looking back in retrospect, we sort of know this 94 to 97 period of Nine Inch Nails was sort of raw, chaotic energy. I think personally, the music, in the live music in that period, this is probably one of the greatest representations of chaos. Did you know, at that point in time, casting your mind back, did you know that this tour is something special, or at the time did it feel like, oh, this is another live show to me, and
yeah,
photos?
Yeah, I think it felt like there would be many like it, you know. I didn't think it would stand out. It stood out with other musicians, but within its own catalog, I felt like, well, this is maybe special because it's early on. But you know, even Trent, you know, I've had the feedback come back. Just, you know, you got the iconic ones, dude. It's you lucked out, you know. Yeah.
Do you know how many keyboards eventually got destroyed?
Well, somebody was going to bring keys that there was a gentleman that said he had keys that they sprayed out into the audience, and he went and found them. I don't know if he's here, but he was going to try and make it and bring the keys. But yeah, that was at times pretty humorous because basically I remember being in the production office, and like Van Eaton, who was in charge of the keyboards, was like on the phone with Yamaha going, well, we'll take every one of those that are in, you know, because they were doing, I'm not a music technology guy, but I think it was a DX7 or something like that. Well, I was hearing that they were running out of, they no longer made the DX7, but the reason why Trent and everybody was choosing the DX7 was because it was still a metal case. So you could hit it with your foot and play it, and then they would like surgery, put keys back in, and like they could get like 3 more songs out of it. But there was a point where the metal was like so bent up, and it was a very simple keyboard, so there wasn't a lot of parts. But all of a sudden, because it wasn't in production anymore, they found a warehouse where they had like the last 100 of them, and they just bought them all, you know. And I think that tour successfully destroyed every DX7. And then there was a moment where Robin, the guitar player, like Robin and Trent would get into it, and then Robin would react by like doing something, and like the top of his Les Paul would, you know, break, and from what I understand, the Les Paul, it's like all one or something, so it's not, if it was a Fender, it could be fixed quicker or something like that. But so there was a moment when the tour, the wheels were coming off the tour, and it was like we needed to come off the road. But there was this one moment where like Robin's running around, and the everything's going and looping and feeding back, and he comes over to his guitar tech. He goes, "I need another guitar," and he's like, "I don't have any more." And Robin just goes and just started back out with like the headstock and was just like hitting the keyboards, and I was like, okay, we need to come off the road. It was like, this is like almost too much, yeah. So.
Final questions, this lady here.
Really quick, I've seen some amazing photographs of Bill with the kids, Is any of that your
What-
out there?
what is it?
The Kids, Seattle, the Kids, Music.
Oh, was it in during that tour?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would,
Well, the Kids from Seattle, Music Papa.
right.
Okay, so is any of that yours out there? There's some amazing film and photographs.
I did everything in that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, there was a couple times there was a film crew that came out, but we didn't really use this stuff because it didn't fit with everything else. But yeah.
And welcome to Melbourne, San Francisco, and the house.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on. Yeah, awesome.
Thank